So I've been following this Ezra Miller thing pretty closely because I think it's fascinating. I think it's one of the scariest incidences publicly of a Hollywood star ostensibly losing his mind. But some of the things that he says and does, and he has connections with these spiritual advisors, and you start to really wonder if there's a demon living inside of Ezra Miller. So Vanity Fair publishes this thing September 18th, 2022 by a person named Julie Miller, which I think is funny. And the pronouns are immediately very annoying. This whole thing is an erasure of male violence. It's one of the many facets of the transgender issue. But when they report on violent males and refuse to use the male pronouns, it is an erasure of violence committed by a male. Using they, them, and we all know, we all have to grit our teeth while we read these things. And it's, really, you'd think they'd put it together, because even in this article, they're talking about how Ezra Miller uses this identity to abuse people. Basically, when he gets angry, he can use this against people, or he can snap at them if they use the wrong pronouns, even though it seems like he doesn't always care, according to this reporting. So let's just read some of it. The very beginning is stuff that I already knew, so it took me a while to scroll down to find new information. And if you haven't been following this story, basically Miller has started a cult of personality around himself, and it involves a young woman, Dakota Iron Eyes, who he met when she was 12 at the Standing Rock, and he has these delusions, as Vanity Fair reports here, that he is helping Native Americans and that he's spiritually connected to them. And this could be that he has, one of his spiritual advisors was a Native American, and we'll get there. So, quote, most sources describe Miller's spiral as a conflagration of mental health issues the actor has acknowledged, along with drugs, guns, and outlandish claims, that has raged for more than 2 years. They say the actor verbally and emotionally abused those around him, and I'm going to refuse to use the pronouns, and referred to himself alternately as Jesus and the devil. 3 people say Miller has also wrapped the superhero they play into their grandiose speechifying. The actor says one source was claiming that the Flash is the one who brings the multiverse together, just like Jesus. Okay? So it's a combination of a lot of things here, right? He's open spiritually, actually. He's very vulnerable if he's doing all of this stuff to his body, all these drugs. He's developed delusions of grandeur. He's claiming, that certain people are Jesus and others are the devil. And, again, one has to wonder about, they used to call this possession, right? This would be possession. Now it's mental illness. But he even talks about how he plays around with mental illness. Like I said in a previous video, we as a culture right now have really made light of mental illness in this way, where people can just adopt these things, self-diagnose, and it's a real mess, and it's actually detrimental to people who are really actually mentally ill. I think Ezra Miller has a combination of a bunch of things going on here. The Peter Pan factor, fame at a very young age, people praising him. Also, kind of like this man who's very attractive and knows it. And I think that goes with Johnny Depp's character as well. Just people, men and women do this too, where they haven't really had to do much in their life other than rely on their looks, and therefore they develop very shallow personalities. Okay, moving on. What else do I have highlighted here? Oh, and he has also conflated his role as the Flash, like he wears the ring around. It's very strange behavior. In his interviews, Miller has long fashioned himself as a Hollywood outsider and queer champion who blurs gender lines. The actor has offered journalists marijuana mid-interview. To me, that sounds a lot like Johnny Depp. They're very similar to me. And the whole obsession with Native Americans, too. And spoken in gibberish to reporters at Comic-Con while wearing silk lingerie as sexy Super Mario Brothers character. Just let that one speak for itself. Miller's outspokenness about sexuality and gender identity earned him a reputation for empathy and progressiveness. And my note here is basically, yes, this is an easy way to show, like, oh yeah, I care, I'm empathetic, I'm talking about the gender cult, when in reality, the only thing they care about is themselves and promoting this ideology. March 2020 Iceland, where I think the first sort of like cult-like appearance where he gathered this group of people around him. Someone who became close with Miller about 3 years ago says the actor was open about their ebb and flow relationship with mental health. The actor told The Hollywood Reporter in 2018, "I think for me the times we live in are sort of a choose-your-own-adventure of mental illness." And that's what I was saying before about the mental illness. And, quote, "Millennials have been given a lot of intense information. People think we're crazy, and they're right." Okay? In March 2020, when the world shut down because of the coronavirus and Fantastic Beasts halted production, Miller suddenly faced an indefinite amount of downtime. The thing is, with Ezra, there's absolutely no plan, says the source. It's complete chaos. I didn't even know that we were going to Iceland until he said, "Let's go to Iceland." The first time Miller was accused of choking a stranger in Iceland, the incident was dismissed as a drunken altercation, but the second incident was filmed and went viral. So has a habit of lashing out, of choking random people. But this man is violent. And it says in this reporting here that nothing sticks to him, and he's probably paying people off. And I think this goes on far more behind the scenes than we even care to know about. But, and I think, this is a big problem for Hellwood. Like, Ezra Miller is a problem because he's really sort of displaying, I think, a lot of the things that they like to keep secret. This sort of interest in the occult, this sort of sheer, narcissism, this letting these actors basically, abuse themselves and others around them. Like, I just think it's far more common, and the Ezra Miller story is a glaring example of that. 3 people, including 2 who have known Miller for over a decade, believe the outbursts in Iceland were partly kindled by the emotional stress of the actor's parents' divorce. Okay, so his parents got divorced in 2019, but his father quickly remarried, the sources say. Ezra didn't start freaking out and losing control of himself in public until after this happened, says a longtime friend. And keep in mind, I'm correcting all the pronouns here. The Iceland incident happened, and then it just kept going and going and going. Okay, so possibly, but lots of people's parents get divorced. While in Iceland, Miller was accompanied by Jasper Young Bear, a 55-year-old North Dakota medicine man the actor had hired as a spiritual advisor. Jasper was telling Ezra that he wasn't part of the movement, he was the movement, and he was the next Messiah, and the Freemasons were sending demons out to kill him, says a source, who, like the others who have been close to Miller, sometimes misgenders Miller, who is said not to insist on they-them pronouns in private. Interesting. So yeah, he's already using Native American people as these spiritual advisors, and this guy sounds like a complete grifter, just a sycophant. You know, we see depictions of this. I think the most famous recently is probably the what is that show? The Silicon Valley show, where the guy has like a spiritual guru who's just basically there to be a yes man.
Dan Puck, I know you were in Aspen. Thank you for coming. Please, have a seat.
I'm not sitting this summer.
Of course. Incredible.
What's weighing on you, Gavin?
Jared Dunn quit today to join Pied Piper. I hate Richard Hendricks.
That little Pied Piper prick.
Is that wrong?
In the hands of a lesser person, perhaps. But in the hands of the enlightened, hate can be a tool for great change.
You're right, once again.
So Ezra Miller would talk about the metaverse and the medicine and how he's the Messiah. He says his spiritual practice is to be among the people, which means party. His favorite were raves, where he'd go on benders for 2 or 3 days at a time. Sometimes Miller would extend offers to people the actor met during their travels. Says a source, he was telling kids, you're going to be in my band and I'm going to produce your album and you can run my music studio, whether they were visual artists, DJs, or kids in college, or sometimes kids who might have been homeless. He would recruit them in a period of vulnerability and promise them all of these things. Nothing ever seemed to materialize. Miller smoked marijuana, performed chaos magic, and played Call of Duty into the early morning. This is in Vermont in 2022, so fast forward to Vermont. Since 2017, he has lived on a farm in Vermont, which they christened as the Mountain. But staying at Miller's meant abiding the actor's rules and tolerating the long monologues. Right? I think part of, these people are very easily manipulated, and I'm sure there's a faction that don't believe any of this and are just there for the free drugs. Miller is said to have woven young Dakota Iron Eyes into his narrative, claiming that the pair were fated to be together. From a source, Ezra is Jesus and Dakota's an apocalyptic Native American spider goddess, and their union is supposed to bring about the apocalypse, recaps one person. And I find the imagery here very interesting, this sort of spider goddess and him being Jesus. When someone gets way down into that rabbit hole and is fueled by drugs, right? They start really believing this stuff. So, like I said, it's a combination of all this stuff and just completely, kind of a psychotic person, I think. He says he is some kind of messiah and he's going to lead an indigenous revolution. The actor himself does not have Native American ancestry, and despite being fixated on Native cultures, does not strike everyone as respectful. He professes that he walks through this world with an indigenous humility and spiritual awareness, says one indigenous insider. But point of fact, he doesn't at all, because he doesn't care. So in 2018, he tells Playboy that he's in a polyamorous relationship, which he calls a polycule. But according to other people, and I always find this very funny when people are like, it's not the practice of polyamory that's the problem, it's the way they're doing it. Okay, sure. The polycule is less a democratic society, according to 3 insiders, than an ever-shifting court harem of mostly young women. A friend of the actor says, an openly polyamorous lifestyle that's not inherently wrong to me. Okay, but it fuels these things, in my opinion. And in this reporting, he's become friends with this polyamorous, or in the article it calls him a polygamist, which is very interesting. It's pick one, isn't the guy who's a polygamist polyamorous? Ezra Miller gives him this lion ring, from like Kay's Jewelers. And this guy has also been brought up on charges, according to this reporting. Would love to know his name. Anyway. But Miller's situation, in their opinion, is actually a patriarchal dictatorship where Ezra controls all the sex as the man and plays the women against each other, screams at them, belittles them in front of others. Yeah. An old friend partly blames yes men who watched it all happen. Even though I've learned that Ezra is such an asshole, I don't think it exonerates the people that were happy to eat off of Ezra's plate until it didn't suit them anymore. I think they ended up accidentally being complicit in weird abuses in power and celebrity. Some people who know Miller believe that the star weaponizes their gender identity in certain situations. You don't say. If somebody pisses off Ezra, they're transphobic or a transphobic Nazi, says Iron Eye's mother, Jumping Eagle. Another person remembers Miller burning sage. Oh, this is about the guns. He has a lot of guns. Someone remembers Miller burning sage out of the barrel of an AR-15 and waving it around while singing. Last year, Miller allegedly embarked on a meandering road trip with a small entourage, weapons, and a Kevlar vest. Like, this dude is a combination of so many things. It's kind of wild. I can't even believe he's a real person. And, you know, some people might say, yeah, like, none of this is real, he's acting, but, like, no, this is very dangerous for the innocent people involved here. He was threatening KKK people. He says this is not a joke, and even though I do recognize myself to be a clown, there's that clown imagery. That's why sometimes I really do think these people are possessed by demonic entities. Please trust me and take this seriously. And Ezra was freaking out about it. Oh yeah, like, this is this thing with the KKK. It's like not that important, but he owns the bow and arrow that he was using as a character in the film We Need to Talk About Kevin, which is very interesting to me. Like, he conflates these roles. Like, there's even this picture with him, like, with multiple eyes from an event in this story at the Met Gala 2019. He is definitely disassociated with himself, as if there is even a self there. He's related far too much to his characters. He's experiencing delusions of grandeur, like I said. Like, I just don't understand why they can't make something stick to him. I think his victims are really scared. And that's, I mean, he's a terrifying dude. Even someone in this article says, like, don't mess with him. Okay, so here's where he meets this polygamist. The man and his 4 wives, including the aforementioned Anna, invited the pair to stay on the property with them and their 4 young children. Strange things happened almost immediately. Miller returned to the house one day, following what they said was a run-in with the cops, complaining about being unfairly targeted and carrying an armload of toys for the kids. The actor recruited women to help him chainsaw guava trees in the backyard and build a sweat lodge. One day, while strolling a strip mall with the polygamous patriarch, Miller spontaneously bought him a $2,000 diamond and ruby encrusted gold lion ring from Kay Jewelers. Miller proposed merging families. According to the father, it was like, we should be partners forever. I want to take you all around the world, says the patriarch, and I didn't decline it. I knew what kind of state he was in. Okay, what does that say about that dude's character? Plus, he's a polygamist. I mean, it's very interesting, like I said, how they're choosing words where it suits them to. Polyamory, polygamy, which one? Should we defend both of these practices? Like what? Speaking to Playboy in 2018, Miller said, I've survived abuse for sure in a lot of capacities starting from a pretty young age. And then we see the sort of overlap with Johnny Depp. Someone warned Vanity Fair, quote, Don't poke a hornet's nest because one stung a few people. Right, so I think this just speaks to the fear of the victims that have been involved in Ezra Miller and his circles of friends. And I love this. Despite being concerned, the polygamist still believes in the integrity of the connection he made with Miller and is still wearing the gold lion ring the actor gave him. Yeah. Because I think he sees someone similar to himself in Miller. Then there's this woman from his past who actually got broken up with by Miller after his spiritual advisor told Miller that she was a parasite, and she's having a lot of cognitive dissonance in this write-up here. Basically, you know, her feelings are complicated. She says, quote, "I can make excuses for him all day, but I don't want to anymore." She says, "The illusions of grandeur need to be called out. I will love Ezra always, and I don't want him to continue down this dark road." So that's sort of just my reading of the Vanity Fair piece about Miller here. They say he's getting help. You know, many of his close friends don't believe it because they've heard it so many times. It's really a shame for all the victims involved that the justice system is lacking in its capacity to do anything about Miller. Apparently all the guns are illegal, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it's really upsetting, actually, that these actors and their fan bases too, right? Which I wouldn't be surprised if, like, they're paying farms of people to act as their fans. So that's about it for this one. Sorry if that was a little dry. It's really for people who didn't have time to read it and are still interested in the Miller story. I'll be back later on with some more interesting stuff. I hope everyone's having an awesome time doing whatever they're doing, and please take care.